Okay, Rabbi, I want to share with you a very important perspective on Galus YISHMOEL, and perhaps to try to glean some insight into why this terrible tragedy occurred on one of the happiest days of our calendar, on Simchas Torah. Very hard to comprehend how such a terrible thing could happen on the day of our joy, on the happiest day of the year. The Vilna Gaon was B'Simcha and Shmini Atzeres more than any other day of the year. And what could we possibly glean from here? In our generation, we live in an era of transition. In the beginning of the 20th century, we faced a terrible threat, an existential threat from Galus Edom, from Esav, from Amalek. And then, 1945, like on a dime, all of a sudden, the world and the Jewish people face a new threat, Galus YISHMOEL. We know there's an idea, Lam Natseach al Hashminis, that all of the Dalet Galuyos, each Galus really is two parts, has two parts to it. Rashi in Zechariah says, Bavel and the Kasdiim, Paras and Madai, Yavan and the Kaladoy and Alexandra, Moiktan, and then we have Edom and YISHMOEL. What exactly are the two roles of these two Galusim? In Pirkei Rabbi Elazar, at the end of Perek Lamed, Bilam says from all the 70 nations that Hashem created, God only placed His name in two nations, YISROEL and YISHMOEL. Like the pasuk says, V'karas Shema YISHMOEL. And says the Medrash, since God equated the name YISHMOEL to YISROEL, Bilam says, whoa, mi yichyeh, misumai kael, who can live from the nation that God placed His name in? Rav David Luria in Ois Ayin Tes explains that God only placed His name Kael, that the name of a nation should have the name Kael in it, only in Yaakov, Vayikra Shema Yisrael, and in YISHMOEL, like the Malach says to Hagar, V'kara Shema YISHMOEL. What commonality is there between YISHMOEL and Yaakov? So, the Radal explains further that YISHMOEL is oiches and grabs the zechus of Avraham, the Ish Chesed. Avraham warned and commanded YISHMOEL that at the very least he should be oiches in the midah of hachnasas orchim. The Radal continues that historically the Bnei YISHMOEL, even the Aravim, who plunder, but nevertheless they practice the custom of Avraham to their own and their machnes orchim. So apparently YISHMOEL has a certain kayach that they maintain the practice of Avram Avinu of hachnasas orchim. And because of that we cry out, Bilam says, Mi yichyeh misumai kael. And we feel that pachad today. We feel the cry of Bilam, Mi yichyeh, from YISHMOEL. So then it comes out that if YISHMOEL's kayach is from the midah of chesed and the midah of hachnasas orchim, then we have to be mechazik ourselves in this midah, that the midah of chesed and hachnasas orchim should be more natural to us, and we should cling to it more, and we should fulfill it with more sincerity and more devotion. But there's another dimension of the difference between Galus Edom and Galus YISHMOEL. You know, Rabbeinu Bechaye points out that the name YISROEL was given to Yaakov in the context of the prohibition that Klal Yisrael cannot eat the gid hanosha. in the context where the angel of Esav struck Yaakov in the hip socket. So he was given the name YISROEL, and he was told not to eat from the Gid Hanasha. And Rabbeinu Bechaye says that the name Yaakov indicates a certain bakasha for physicality, for gashmias, for shiflus. But Rabbeinu Bechaye says the name YISROEL reflects srara, seeking intellectual pursuit, understanding the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So listen carefully, and we try to say this as sensitively as possible. Yaakov indicates the Jewish people on a lower level, perhaps even somewhat connected to the physicality. YISROEL reflects the ambition of a godly nation to pursue spiritual pursuits. Therefore, says Rabbeinu Bechaye, because our name is YISROEL, therefore the nation of Israel should not be immersed in taiva, and physicality, and gashmios, which is compared to the Gid Hanasha. Meaning the eating of the Gid Hanasha represents an immersion in the physicality. So we learn that the name YISROEL reflects the Jewish people as a nation pursuing the spiritual and not immersed in physicality. You know what's interesting? Rav David Goldberg has a sefer, Kol Doidi Doifek, which is about Golus YISHMOEL, and he brings that he personally heard from Rav Shach that there's a very big difference in the challenge in our generation and the challenge before the war. Before the war in Europe, the challenge was a philosophical challenge. People were influenced by different ideologies, by Haskalah, by socialism, by Bundism, by various movements. It was a ideological challenge, Haskalah. And after the war, people are not challenged anymore intellectually. After the war, God bestowed upon Klal Yisrael a bounty, a shefa of physical and material blessing. And our challenge is being immersed in gashmias, luxuries, moisrais. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Jewish people unparalleled bracha in our history. So it's interesting. Before the war, the challenge was physical challenge. Before the war, the challenge was ideological challenge, a philosophical challenge. After the war, the challenge was luxury, physicality, moisrais. So Rav Goldberg says, isn't it striking that before the war we were challenged by Esav? But after the war, where we're challenged by YISHMOEL, in order to counteract YISHMOEL, we have to be on the madrega of YISROEL. We have to be on the level of YISROEL. And the level of YISROEL is the pursuit of the spiritual, the pursuit of the deos of Hashem, the pursuit of understanding darkei Hashem, yedios, muskalois, scholim nefradim. In other words, if we want to overcome YISHMOEL, we have to be worthy of the title YISROEL. Yaakov can overcome YISHMOEL. Only YISROEL could overcome YISHMOEL. And to be YISROEL represents the Jewish people's pursuit of the spiritual, rising above immersion in the physical world. The battle between these two areas at no time in the year more pronounced than Simchas Torah. Simchas Torah is the day of joy, of our connection to Torah Seinu HaKadosha. Simchas Torah is the day of rejoicing that we have the privilege and we have the intellectual majesty to understand the Darkei Hashem, to learn Hashem's Torah, to pursue Hashem's Torah, to probe Hashem's wisdom. And at the same time, it's the day of the year sometimes that we are prone to immersion in, so to speak, the physical luxury of what Jewish life has to offer us today. You know, on the one hand, we rejoice over our connection to the Torah, and there's also a danger. There's a danger of all the physicality of Jewish life and culture today, even in the most observant circles, where the celebration becomes extremely immersive. Be'achila uveshsiya ve'hamevin yavin. I don't think there's any day of the year where the battle between Yaakov and YISROEL is more pronounced than on Simchas Torah. And I'll leave it to much greater people than myself. We don't understand the ways of Shamayim. But one thing we know is to overcome YISHMOEL, we have to be YISROEL. And YISROEL is Klal Yisrael pursuing Sichlios, Darkei Shamayim, Darkei Hashem, to rise above Vayishman, Yeshurun, Vayivat. I want to share something with you that Rav David Goldberg writes in his Sefer. He brings from the Svarno in Parshas Hazinu on the Pasuk, Vayishman, Yeshurun, Vayivat. Yeshurun became fat and they kicked. Shamanta, you became fattened. Avisa, you became corpulent. Kasisa, you became thickened. Vayitosh Eloikas Oisehu. You forsook Hashem. Says the Svarno, the Jewish people here are referred to as Yeshurun. You know who Yeshurun is? Kahal Toivsei HaTorah. Yeshurun are the congregation of the Jewish people who they are immersed in Torah. They're Balei Ion. But those Jews, B'nai Aliyah, B'nai Torah, B'nai Yeshiva, Toivsei HaTorah, what happens is, Panisa el hatanugim hagashmiyim, they turn to physical pleasure. And because of that, they become too coarsened and thickened from recognizing the truth. In other words, you know who's most responsible to make sure that they're not immersed in the physicality of this world? Those who are connected to the Torah. They have to guard their souls, their hearts, and their mind more than the rest of the Jewish people, because they appreciate what the Torah has to offer. They appreciate the value of in-depth study. Vayishman Yeshurun, the accusation is against Yeshurun. If such a tragedy happened on a Simchas Torah, then it has to alert us. What is Simchas Torah? What path are we on? Is our joy in this world the joy of the pursuit of the intellectual and spiritual value of the Torah, or are we too immersed in the physical, cultural aspect of Jewish life today? This is in no way insinuating that we know the reason for anything that happens in this world, but certainly it should alert us. If it happened on such a holy day, it should alert us that if we want to counteract YISHMOEL, we need to be on the Madrega of YISROEL. And the Madrega of YISROEL, Rabbeinu Bechaye says, Ma'ala v'srara al ba'kashas hamuskalos v'yedias hascholim hanefradim. The pursuit of the sublime element of the Torah, but not to be immersed in al kain lo yoichlu b'nei Yisrael as gid hanosha. The gid hanosha is a representative of lo yasku talmidei Yisrael be'inyan hatavos hagashmiyos. So we should all merit to aspire to the madrega of Yisrael that could overcome YISHMOEL. And Be'ezus Hashem, the Rebbe Shem should answer our tefillos, and the Rebbe Shem should give us nitzachain, and the Rebbe Shem alkein yoivdu kol oivei Hashem, and we should be zoicha to see b'karev mamish the geula shlema. Thank you everybody for joining us, and Be'ezus Hashem, we'll see you next Monday. You could join us Wednesday night at 8:30. We have Divrei Torah Wednesday morning at 10:45. Every morning at 9 a.m. Mishnah Berurah. And starting soon, we're going to be continuing in the Sefer Tzipi Sol Yeshua. Have a good day, everyone. Bracha v'atzlacha. Bracha.